I'm up on stage today to tell you all about the day that my perspective changed. And I'm hoping that by the end of this talk, I can push everybody towards a turning point that I had to experience based on this adversity. So it was a hot, sunny Sunday, summer afternoon, and going to seek relief from the sun and a successful week of camping, me and two friends decided to head to the bridge over the river to catch a tan and cool off before we headed back to our real lives in the city of Victoria. I chose to live and associate in a world of people very able both in mind and body. Living a completely independent life as a business operator and fitness competitor, the last thing to cross my mind was adversity. I was always keeping up with boys. There's 1, 2, 3, go were the last words chanted before I threw my flip-flops in and jumped feet first after them. I felt the break upon impact of the water, so I assumed, never coming in contact with the bottom. I searched for the surface, reaching my arms up and pulling them down. I felt the feeling leave my body from my chest straight out of my toes. It felt as though to be left behind. When I came to the surface, I searched for that first gasping breath of air everybody searches for, finding it labored. I jumped beside a friend that day. He's totally fine. Our conversation in the water was brief. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "Yes." "Is it bad?" "Yes." "What can I do to help?" Focusing the entire time on breath in, breath out, I did my best to breaststroke to shore, making it to the closest rock wall before I had both the guys, one supporting between my shoulder blades and the other underneath of my knees, helped me back crawl the rest of the way to the shore. This beach was made up of river rocks. Lying there on my back was unbearable pain. So I had one of the guys reach his arm underneath of me to pull the stones away from where I later found out was the exact location of my break. Still in too much pain to handle, I lifted my eyes and saw a sandy patch 50 feet upstream from where I was lying. So I directed traffic, both the guys, and enlisted the help of another innocent bystander who had set up beach camp alongside of us and was witness to the whole event with his family. They took the blanket I had and stretched it, slid it underneath of me, and floated me back upstream to where there wouldn't be any sharp stones poking into my back. Well, let's just say people under stress have a real hard time following directions, especially when they're coming from the victim, who may think she's making more sense than she is. The cot-like style, when you stretch all the corners tight of that blanket, turned into more of a hammock, and me with my fractured T5, T6, broken sternum, first broken rib on one side and fifth on the other, and 14 spinous processes. That's what they call a catastrophic injury. And I was left to wait for the drugs for hours. So, forgot to mention, we were well into the bush, about 20 minutes beyond Port Renfrew, and further yet for those of you who are not aware from self-service. I told the guys, make sure you call the medevac. I'm not going back to Victoria in an ambulance. There's nothing that they can do for me there. Then we split forces, one of them staying with me and the other one driving 20 minutes back into town to go and wake the paramedic up, who was found sleeping on the couch. I'm sure that was a rude awakening to poor kid. So here I lie in the 31-degree heat, breath in, breath out. I was focused completely on retaining as much oxygen as possible, thinking only briefly. Thank God for the heat today. I'm broken. I can't feel my legs. Breath in, breath out. Did I puncture a lung? What have I done to the inside of me? When are the paramedics going to get here? It's hot. 3.5 hours later, I was strapped to the backboard, I wouldn't let them strap my head in between the little styrofoam things because I'm claustrophobic and I know the risks of having broken my head and my neck, so I promised not to move it. They allowed it to happen. And lying there, I can finally hear the helicopters start to search for me. Now, let's just say these guys are the top gun of the paramedics in BC. Two big dudes bring the drugs and the means of getting me to safety. Disability reared its ugly head that day. In the twinkling of an eye, my once highly functioning, able-bodied became something that I had to learn to manage in a whole new way. My temporarily able-bodied, or a TAB, as we like to be called, became completely foreign to me, all because of the split-second decision to override my intuition and jump. We're all one circumstance away from disability, and we're all aging into it. Nobody is exempt from this fact. Now, here I lie in acute care, hooked up to machines beyond my comprehension, with no thoughts on this new way of life, and no assumptions on what life will look like when I have to go back home. I don't recall ever being told that I sustained a spinal cord injury and that it resulted in complete paralysis. I still to this day don't remember if I greeted my mom and dad with smiles or questions. So let's just think about a typical day in the city. For you temporarily able-bodied audience, it goes pretty simple. You have an appointment, you call a cab, you step off the curb, quickly get in there, driven to the appointment, all's good. This is how that simple act plays out in the mind of somebody with a mobility challenge. We want to book an appointment. We have to make sure that office has no stairs to the front entry. Once you're inside, are there ramps and lifts getting you to where you need to be? And if those two things happen, is there an accessible washroom that's available to you? When all of those things align, then I can call and book the appointment. Now, transportation. And for anybody that requires a lift beyond a typical cab, sometimes this vehicle needs to be called weeks in advance. For somebody with a mobility challenge, calling a cab on the day that's needed turns into dangerous. This is because even if you get through, they'll take hours to get there and sometimes choose not to show up. Next, does the ramp come out of the side or the back of the cab? Is there access off the sidewalk onto the street level where it's going to be parked? And if there's weather, has the snow been shoveled away from the curb cut so that you can actually get to the vehicle on the street? And lastly, let's hope that nobody has any accidents. And for you TABs, you temporarily able-bodied people, it does not mean that you are worried about that driver crashing on the way there. You're worried about yourself, pissing or shitting yourself. It's this dialogue that follows every event, every day of every single disabled person, regardless of the visibility of your disability. I believe that is these invisible disabilities that deserve the most empathy. No more making assumptions. No more passing judgments based on looks. Because, let's face it, the way we see our world shapes our world. Every community has its barriers, seen and unseen, environmental and personal. It's my attitude towards these barriers had to shift because of the perspective that I was forced. It is this radical acceptance that I've used to excel into a new walk of life. This acceptance, here's proof. I lived and worked 4 years downtown Victoria. Every time walking down the streets, I was accosted or asked for my change. These less fortunate became familiar faces as I walked by them 7 days a week, garbling nonsense and shaking a cup towards me. My eyes were open the first time that I was brought back home by my sister to learn my new life in this old place. I was still completely dependent on her in the clunky old hospital chair. I couldn't move myself around without being pushed. And so there I sat, going for coffee, the human cup holder, dependent on her pushing me, were no longer able-bodied, swiftly and agilely moving through the crowds of people downtown. The visiting school children that choose to walk 6 wide on the sidewalk, the tour groups that are aimlessly searching for anything in the air as they follow the voice of their tour guide. Not to mention the tens of thousands of cruise ship traffic that line the streets haphazardly in the middle of summer. Now, dependent on my sister, all of these groups see the wheelchair coming. This overwhelming sight is also entertaining at the same time. It's now I'm seen as a disabled female. The guy in Bastion Square sitting there with no legs in his almost matching wheelchair doesn't recognize me. After 4 years of garbling nonsense towards me and asking me for my change, this gentleman looks at me, smiles, clears his throat, and politely says, "Hello." This was my first real large realization and reality check. No longer am I the fitness model in high heels, tight jeans, and tailored blazers. I'm now seen as his equal, strictly because of the chair. It's only been 2 months since my injury, and people's perceptions of me are drastically different. And this is going to be it for the rest of my life. It is these new perceptions of me that I've used, too pretty to be in a wheelchair, as the fuel to overcome these stereotypes. I'm pushing to educate everybody on the simple fact that we are all aging into disability. We are all pushing to live independent lives for as long as possible. People in wheelchairs are presumed to be there involuntarily. No one wants to be there, and therefore it remains scary and foreign to most. I dream of seeing the day that these barriers are broken down and the lines between able versus disabled blur into active versus inactive. We're either aging with a disability or into one. We can do it with grace, being happy and healthy, smiling for as long as possible, or we can do the opposite, choosing to take whatever it is that is affecting us, lying down in defeat. I will tell you this though, wheelchairs are more fun with friends. I lived for the past 3.5 years in the West Kootenays, which has separated me from the wheelie community that resides on the West Coast and in larger cities. They're always the people that are guaranteed when you're having a bad day, you can call them to make you feel better. But then there's the old friends, my still walking friends, who take the adversity that's tossed at myself or at them in stride, accepting my new circumstances and learning with me. If we're not challenging these new adverse lifestyles with laughter, it's through the tears. I find it strange that people will judge, laugh, or question somebody that stands up out of a wheelchair in order to navigate big hills or obstacles. I really enjoy when my able-bodied friends, such as the girl on the left, take to my disability. They want to be in the chair, they want to play on my level and recreate the same way that I do. She's done playing tennis. Normally, she'd like to get in a tennis chair. It's way more fun, so I'm told. Because she test drives my circumstance, it makes it more okay. It's a scary world being thrown into adversity when you've never dealt with it your whole life, and to have your friends accept with open arms, be open to the circumstance that's been tossed your way, makes life way easier. And it also makes her more aware of her surroundings and of every individual that she encounters who has a challenge. Disability often leads to loneliness, and I'd like to see everybody work together to avoid this in the future, not assuming that somebody can't participate because of their circumstance. We need to accept and acknowledge people's different kinds of normal. I'm not asking for special treatment because I'm in a wheelchair. My circumstance has opened my eyes to an astonishing world full of highly capable people doing incredible things through all modalities of sport. Let's work together to build barrier-free communities. We're all on the same path. some just get there first. Thanks, guys.